unstoppable kick-ass confidence. Are you ready?
Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted show with Christopher Rausch, where we help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Now please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the friggin' Raw and Unscripted show. It's me, Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses coach, and I'm just trying to get my bearings together because I literally been going nonstop since 5 o'clock this morning, actually 4:45. I've been talking since 6 o'clock this morning, so I apologize if my throat is a little hoarse, but you are at your place where I help you get results. And you ditch the excuses. How simple can that be? Let's ditch our excuses. Let's get some results. How about this? How about let's keep our promises to ourselves? I was having a conversation with one of my coaching clients today, brand new coaching client. And I said, what would life be like if you kept your promises to yourself? Because she's like, you know, I've been making these promises to myself and I just haven't been keeping them. And so I invited the question to her and I said, what would that be like? Just imagine all the promises you've made to yourself. What would it be like if you kept your promises? I said, that's what I'm going to be here to help you do. And that's what we're here to do every single week here on the Raw and Unscripted show. We've been going now for 303 episodes. This is the 303rd episode. We just celebrated our 300th episode. If you had not a chance to get it check it out, do yourself a favor and check it out. We had a great time on there, kind of talked about the origin story of the podcast, talked about what it takes to have consistency in your life, what it takes to have a big mission in your life. But yeah, I mean, that's what we do here is we get ourselves to think about life in a different perspective, right? I think about it this way. You show up to this podcast every single week. We call it class. And you take 3 strategies, count them 1, 2, 3 strategies. And if you're really good, you write them down on a sticky note and you stick them on your monitor. So you have 3 strategies you take from this conversation, you put them on your monitor and you say, hey, for the next 7 days, I'm going to focus on these 3 things. And then you show up again next week and you take 3 more strategies. And before you know it, in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, yes, it might take that long. Your life, from shifting your perspective just a little bit every single week, your life becomes massively different. You start keeping your promises to yourself. You start following up on your consistency. You start pushing yourself out of your comfort zone more times than you run to your comfort zone. And you start making better decisions about your health and your mindset and your relationships. And guess what? Life will be perfect. No. Life will never be perfect. And I can promise you this also, because I can hear you already saying, but Chris, that sounds hard. That sounds hard, Chris. And I can tell you, yeah, life is challenging, even for me. Even for me, I had a couple of rough days over the last 7 days. If you guys follow me on TikTok, you know I shared 2 very vulnerable TikTok stories, and just kind of let you know that I don't wake up all the time all rosy and sunshine and yeah, let's kick ass unstoppable. Some days I wake up thoroughly exhausted. My brain is warped and I'm frustrated and I'm tired and I am whatever other emotion you might want to put into it. And so I have to take my advice in these situations to progressively sit there and say, okay, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Right? You guys know, if you follow me for any length of time, I think in terms of questions. You ask yourself better questions, you get better answers. You don't lie to yourself either. Like when I ask you, or you ask yourself, am I happy in this relationship? Yes or no? Don't say, yeah, kind of, sort of. If you're not happy, say you're not happy. And if you're not happy, then you ask yourself the next question. What am I doing to change that? Have I communicated to my partner about this? Am I happy in my job? Yes or no? No, I hate my job. Okay, what am I willing to do to change that? Do I have a side hustle? No, perhaps I should get a side hustle and start jamming a little bit, start making different choices with my time. And then perhaps in 3 years, perhaps in 5 years, my side hustle will exceed my regular job and I can quit and I can actually do what it is that I love to do. Now you might be saying, Chris, that sounds really cool, but has anyone really done that? Me. I left my job in 2019. I made a lot of good money. I was there for a really long time, but I had been doing the coaching and everything else on the side. And then I finally determined to myself, when am I going to jump out of my comfort zone and do this full time? And so the right crossroads came in November of 2019, and here I am. Episode number 300. Been doing it for 6 years, coaching, speaking, business consulting. And the best part is I get to spend lots of time with my son. So when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. And I can tell you that this conversation tonight, you're definitely going to take notes, as I always tell you guys, because tonight we're going to be talking about fear. And we're going to be going deep on the fear because a lot of people are afraid of the traditional things. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid if they try and it doesn't happen, the dream is better than the reality. But also, you mother truckers, some of you are afraid of success. What will being successful mean for me? I won't have anything to bitch about. What will success mean for me and my friendships and my relationships? And I can tell you this, as you become more successful and as you change and start to love yourself more, the relationships around you will change and you will wish people goodbye. You will. I've had to wish people goodbye in my life, and it sucks. And I don't mean them any harm or any foul. I would be there for them if they called me tomorrow and said, "Hey, Chris, I need some help." But as you continue to elevate, you need to start looking at yourself and sitting there saying, okay, I'm hanging around these 5 guys and they're not doing anything with their lives and I'm not doing anything with my life. So as I start doing things with my life, there's chances are they're going to sit there and say, well, what are you doing, Christopher? And, why do you think you're so special? And And you have to say, hey guys, if you want to come along, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm trying. I would love for you guys to share in the experience and for you guys to elevate as well. But a lot of people like to stay in their misery. They like to stay in their bitchiness. They like to stay in their excuses. And, oh man, I don't have time, Chris. And it's easy for you, Chris, and all those other different things. But at the end of the day, I think about it like this. If I died tomorrow, and there's a chance that could happen for any one of us. If I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? Who would show up and what would they say? More importantly, for me, since I have an 8-year-old son who I love to absolute pieces, what am I leaving behind for him? What legacy, what roadmap am I leaving behind for him? Would I want him to follow in my footsteps and the things that I'm thinking and saying and doing? Yes. I wasn't always like that. So again, when you think about the perspective and what it is that you're focusing on, progressively, bit by bit by bit, you become stronger. You become more courageous. You get more curious about getting uncomfortable, because when you really get uncomfortable, that's where the growth happens. So if you're trying to stay comfortable and you're trying to stay complacent, good luck with that. So without any further ado, this gentleman was on my show. I think it was, what did we say? I can't remember. I should have known that information off the top of my head, but it doesn't matter. This guy is going to blow your socks off. We're going to have a phenomenal, deep conversation. With that, I'm going to make sure. I think he's still there. With that, please introduce Mr. Brian Kelm to the Raw and Unscripted show. What's up, Brian?
What's up, man? No BS zone we're in right now.
No BS. Watch your language, young man.
Yeah,
it's so great to see you. It's so great to have you on here. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You and I have great conversations over Messenger. We need to have more in-person conversations, but I recall having that conversation with you here on the Raw and Unscripted show, and so many people being inspired by that the flow of trading back and forth was really authentic, and I appreciate and respect you so much. So I'm excited for the conversation tonight.
Me too, man.
First and foremost, I'm going to give you this opportunity to answer this on the air, but this is a lot of how I start the show off. We're going to be talking about fear, obviously. What do you want to get across most to people watching and listening tonight? What's like your central message takeaway that you want them to go by? Okay, Brian Kelm said this, and here's what I'm going to do, by golly.
I'm going to say 2, and I just wrote them down in the back, in the green room. By the way, you're out of M&Ms, by the way.
Shit. Sorry.
There's 2 things. Number 1, imperfectly done is better than perfectly undone. I know it might be a cliche statement, but it's absolutely
George Patton.
True, right? The second one is for everybody to think about every day that you go about your business in your life. Why not me? Why not me? We're going to find all the reasons and all the whatever that this person's better looking. They're this, they're that, they're the other thing. Why not me? Because too many people in life, they want to remove the needle from themselves. They want, because then they don't have to look at themselves. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be, but they choose to not to look at themselves versus I'm entitled. I have the same tools as everybody else. Why can't I succeed? Why can't I do that? And when people choose not to examine themselves, and not only do they sell out to themselves, but also though they just keep looking at others as if like, well, I really can't have everything that I want because that's not the way it's ever been for me. But why not me is something I want to get across, because that is where you confront yourself. And how we're programmed as human beings, now, even if we're selfless people, we still have to pay our bills. We still have to live a life. But why not me? And if the first inclination out of your mouth or whatever you say is, well, and you start degrading yourself, that's a place to look.
Exactly.
You know?
Negative self-talk.
100%. So why not me? And imperfectly done is better than, because perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist.
Oh, come on. Aren't I perfect, Brian?
We're all perfect in our own way.
Exactly. No, what I'm hearing you talk about, and I think it's beautiful, is worthiness, right? When I sit there and when I think about we were just talking before camera, we were talking about COVID, and my gift to people during COVID was to give them free coaching sessions and just say, hey, as my way of helping you, I'll give you a complimentary coaching session, no sales, no nothing. And after about the 10th or 15th one, I did a couple hundred. I heard this whisper, God, source, universe, whatever you want to believe. And I heard this question. It said, ask them this. And in my brain, I'm having this conversation while I'm talking to them, just like I'm talking to you. And I'm like, that is a ridiculous question. These people are going to think I'm nuts. And so I sat there and I said, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. I said, okay, Brian, I don't want you to think about this too much, but do you love yourself? Yes or no? And I found more often than not, people sat there and looked at me in the camera. I was like, yeah, I think so. I don't know. I may not like myself. And there was all different variations. Very few said, of course I love myself. Why wouldn't I? And you could tell those people were confident. I could tell, that they were in a different zone. But that fact of loving ourselves, and said, so I would sit there and ask them, like, okay, so you expect this beautiful relationship, you expect this healthy income, you expect all these different things, yet you're not pouring into your own cup first. Yeah. And so my next question would be either them, like, who do you love the most in the world? Like, oh, I love my son, my husband, my mom, whatever it might be. And I'm like, okay, how much do you love them on a scale of 1 to 10? You can't pick 7. And they'd be like a 10. And I said, okay, so how much do you love yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? A 5. And so I would sit there. I'm like, if you do the math, you're giving that person that you say you love a 10, you're actually giving them a 5. And so is that right for them? Like, no. I'm like, okay, so how can we start to have the conversation of loving yourself more? And that's my question to you, Brian. How can we help people who might be watching and listening to this? How can we get them to set aside their preconceived notions, their history of I can't, I won't, I'm not good enough? How can we get them to start rewriting the script to start loving themselves more so that they can start seeing those different results?
Great. This is a great question. And there's a couple different answers there. Number one, you got to be vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable, you can't feel anything. If you're not vulnerable, you can't show your true colors. And I was raised military family with a lot, like guys never cry. That whole motto, that whole mantra that, men never cry, which is bad programming.
True.
From the way it really is. Because if you're not vulnerable, you can't feel anything, and a couple other things would be about this is we take ourselves way too seriously as human beings, way too seriously. When we pass along, the little petty stuff that gets in the way, nobody's going to remember. They're going to remember all the great stuff that you did or what you didn't do. Right. And then also too, you need to shut off the noise. You need to shut off all the people. I remember Gary V.
Yeah. Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. He
Doesn't swear at all.
No, not at all. He's from the southern part of Iowa. That's how they talk there. But he goes, in one of his talks, he talks about where somebody will, like, keeping up with the Joneses per se, right? Yep. So somebody go out and buy a car to try to impress somebody they don't care about.
Yep.
Does that seem logical? No. So then why care? Too many people are trying to please everybody. Well, first of all, that ain't going to happen. Number two, why you could give your whole life and all of your effort to try to please people that aren't going to matter in your journey of life. I don't want to sound cliche, but people pass through your life for 3 reasons: a day, a moment, or a lifetime.
I like it. You
get to choose where they're at, but I guarantee a lot of them are going to be lessons along the way. There's going to be people that, nothing against them, but they pass across your radar and you spend some time with them in life, but it's not going to be forever. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing there is, what lessons, good, bad, or other, did you take away from that experience? Because that's everything if you apply it to your life. We take ourselves way too seriously. We put way too much pressure on ourselves. We have a huge problem in our society about how we appear to other people.
Yes.
Huge problem. Mm-hmm. There are kids that want to harm themselves as a result of not getting so many Facebook likes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
what a horrible existence that has to be in, where your only validation for your importance as a human being is electronic. It has nothing to do with what you wrote, what you said, how smart you are, or any of that. So there's a lot of work, but I think it's also too about how we're programmed as human beings, is that some people toe the line between like being a leader or being a nonconformist, and other people they just fall victim to, well, I already know what it's like over here if I'm conforming with everybody,
right?
But it's like the crabs in a jar type of mentality, right?
Yeah.
Nobody cares if you're all like them, but the minute that you start surpassing them with your knowledge, your expertise, what you want to do with your life, then they got a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're always going to have that at every part of life, but you said something very powerful, is that whether you believe it or not, you're going to run into people through every phase of life, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way it works. That you want to hold on to all this or whatever, but how much baggage are you holding on to along with it? There's a reason why people run through your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think too many people want to blame it on other people instead of being like, hey, it didn't work, or I wasn't the nicest person, or whatever it might be. Be honest with yourself about what that is, so then you can move on. And instead of it being a bunch of roadblocks in front of your eyes, all it is an open road to what it looks like, because there's not all that junk in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah, what you're saying is you're talking about people like being aware, and so oftentimes we're lost in our short-term gratification. We're lost in the busyness of life. God, Brian, I'm so busy, I don't have time for these things, and that's that excuse. But I love what you're saying, is it's about that awareness, and I say it somewhat differently. I say that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. It's about asking ourselves, okay, what is the purpose of that person being in my life? What was the purpose? What was the meaning or the reason behind me getting backstabbed? I mean, I've been backstabbed so many times, it isn't even funny. I should have a big basketball hoop in the back of my back. But it's about that realization that I don't need to take that personal. I don't need to react to everything that happens in my life. I can choose to take a step back and respond to those situations and ask myself, okay, how am I supposed to grow from this?
Right.
And people ask me all the time, Brian, like, how are you so successful? How have you gotten over so many different things in your life that have been would be very, very negative in most people's lives? And I'm like, I look for the reason. Like, I look for the learning opportunity within that, so that I can become better and not bitter.
Right.
And I think that becomes, like you said, I talk about the AAA effect. It's got to be awareness, acceptance, and then action. We have to be aware of the situation. We have to accept it. We don't have to necessarily say it's our fault, but we have to accept it. Like, I have cancer, I have a shitty marriage, I'm in a job that I don't like. But that third part is, what action am I willing to take? Mm-hmm. And that's what we invite people to do in this conversation tonight, is to consider that something maybe Brian says, or I say, or we both say, is something triggering for you guys to sit there and say, you know what, I'm no longer going to accept that. My, Bob Donnell, right? You've heard of Bob Donnell.
Yep.
When it becomes acceptable, it becomes inevitable. That will always resonate in the back of my brain, in the front of my brain. Like, okay, when did it become acceptable to allow people to walk all over me? And so my question to you, brother, is, when in your life did you perhaps didn't love yourself so much? And what was the situation that you needed to go through and grow through in order to kind of have that realization that I don't need to tolerate that from other people, or I don't need to tolerate that negative self-talk from myself?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. This pinpoints me the night before I almost got killed in a car accident.
I knew you were going to talk about that.
Good. Yeah. It was
phenomenal, guys.
It changed my life. What the stuff I was trying to do in business, being an entrepreneur, was well ahead of its time in performance, in how I was providing services to my customers in the wedding and event space. And I kept banging my head against the wall because I thought it was me. And so I started making very bad decisions with people I'd hang around. I would get into womanizing. I would drink too much. And one night I fell asleep at the wheel, and I didn't know how to cope with life. I didn't know how to do it. I ran with the wrong people. And that one occurrence changed my life. Now, it was very sobering in several different ways, when it was like, after I lived and, was not killed, was not a corpse as a result of that, is nobody called me to find out how I was doing that I was associated with at that time. Mm. That gave me goosebumps. I'm like, wow, none of these people, it was in the news, it was talked about. but nobody called to ask how I was. That made a huge difference for me, to be like, wow, I was headed down a wrong path. I was not making good decisions, but I didn't know how else to cope. I did not know how else to deal with the situation. I didn't have the tools, right? And unfortunately, it took me to almost dying in a car accident for me to get lots of tools. I've had many people over the years ask me, how do I learn what you learned without going through what you did? And I'm like, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. I didn't know if I was going to live or die. But also, though, that changed my mindset about how I live every day from a simple standpoint. A majority, let's put 90+% of everything we encounter on a daily basis is petty. Is petty.
At least.
Getting stuck in traffic, to not winning a business deal, to not getting what you wanted for Christmas, whatever it might be. It's all petty in the whole scheme of things compared to what it could be.
Right.
And that's a unique lens to look through life through, because it's like, okay, I had a bad day today. My self-love was in question all day today, but I got through it. I kept believing in myself. I stopped focusing on it. Like Jason Redman says, get yourself off the X. Why are you feeling like this? Why do you feel like you're having a bad day? Well, don't dwell on it, but then try to do something else. But stay in the game, because those muscles you're going to develop through the course of time. And then that's how you become unstoppable. And you keep pushing. You keep pushing that level of what doesn't have access to me in terms of keeping me off of where I need to go. If there is a road that's straight without bumps on it or without problems, that's not a road I want to be on, because of everything that you learn throughout the process. You prepare yourself for those moments in life where you can deal with it. Whereas other people, they'll just wash it away. Like when my dad passed away, I had a choice to make. And this happened 9 months after my car accident. I had a choice to make. And I had a good friend of mine that was probably somebody that most people would not take advice from. I took advice from her. Recovering drug addict, had a whole bunch of problems with men, and just a host of problems that she was dealing with. But she goes to me, Brian, because I just wanted to pick up a bottle and drink my worries away.
Right.
I didn't do that. I just felt powerless about the whole situation. She goes, Brian, I want you to tell me right now, number one, you're not going to do that. Number two is that you can either look at your dad's death head on and face it and become stronger as a result years later, or you can deny that it ever happened and then have a life that might never thrive. I chose to go through it. And then all of a sudden, it was almost 4 years later, I stopped blaming myself for my dad's death. I harbored that for 4 years. And then all of a sudden, I went on a daily walk. And I'm like, Dad, I got to let you go. Because I realized, I'm like, I had nothing to do with your death, but I felt as if I did. So going through stuff like this, it's not easy. But as a result of it, your people that you relate to become a little closer. More people are probably not going to understand you, and that's okay. They don't have to. I'm not asking for people to understand me, and I think that that's also a problem people have in life, is that they can't make a decision without having to ask all these other people that aren't going to decide for them anyway.
So true. So true. I think about that same situation. And I think if I would have asked people for permission, kind of was what we do. We ask for permission, like, oh, do you think I should start a business? No, I think it's a stupid idea. No, you don't need to ask for permission. You sit there and say, you know what? I've decided I'm going to do this, right? Make that commitment. And I love what you're talking about with your dad, because so oftentimes we hang on to that guilt. We hang on to that responsibility. We hang on to that what if or coulda, shoulda, woulda kind of thing with our lives. And it's ridiculous. Oftentimes it's that fear. It's that fear that's holding us back. So what do you think you might have been afraid of in that situation to let go? What was that you had to overcome as far as the responsibility or the way you were thinking in order to have that pivotal moment in your life?
Sure. I would have to say that it's okay that I can admit I don't have to run anymore. You know what I mean?
What were you running from?
How our relationship was at that time. It wasn't the best. What I was doing in business or whatever. My dad was very hardworking man, helped pay me, help provide for me to go to school with my mom, college, first one in my family to go to college. My career path was not for him, being an entrepreneur versus like you work at a traditional place, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you work some place for 40 years and then you retire. That wasn't me. And I think that's really what upset him, what got me through. I would have to say just a combination of being vulnerable, being in touch with my heart, but then also though not wanting to be in pain anymore. That I'm continuing to work on myself, but as I'm working on myself, I'm like, the discovery and the breakthroughs are coming to me that I'm beating myself up over something I had nothing to do. I didn't cause him to die. He fell a massive heart attack. So I think also though trusting in a spirit or a higher power, I think is also, and I'm not the most religious person. I think because sometimes with the higher power, I waver about, what happens in life and why is it happening, right? So we've had our odds.
A lot of us are doing that right now.
I think I've had my odds with him or him or her, or whoever it might be. But I think trusting in that no matter what you're doing or where you're at, it'll get better. It'll get better. There is no timeline in how long it's going to take or whatever. It's going to be what it's going to be. But if you trust the process, and that can sound cliche too, if you trust the process and you do the work, anything is possible.
It's true.
But if you're not willing to do the work, you're not going to get the rewards before the work. That's another thing our society has a problem with. People want to get paid without doing the work first.
Mm-hmm. Especially nowadays, they want that overnight success. They want that immediate gratification. They're not willing to put in the investment of time. And like you said, so poignantly, and I want to make sure people get this, is that it's going to suck and it's going to be hard, but it's not going to stop following you around. And the sooner you wake up and the sooner you become aware and say, you know what, it is what it is. The 5 most powerful words, I think, almost strung together is it is what it is. Here's the facts of the situation. I can choose to ignore it. I can choose to accept it. I can choose to change it. I can choose to change my perspective about it. I can choose to, again, ask myself the question, what am I supposed to be learning from this? And what can I do by which doing so will earn me a sense of pride or a sense of accomplishment or a sense of non-complacency, I guess, if you will, because so oftentimes we stay complacent, we stay stuck in those situations, we stay stuck in our excuses, and oftentimes we use fear as that reason for that. So I'm going to get to a question in a second. I apologize. I haven't recognized all the beautiful souls in the room tonight. We got Robert Broker. What's up, Robert from Canada? Thank you, brother, for being here. We got my sister from another Mr. Elizabeth Montez. What's up? Rock star. She calls me rock star. I think befittingly so. Jacqueline Rose, my Irish sister from another Mr. She says, hello, everyone. Christopher and Brian. Thank you for being there. We got Nasangela in the house. Says, hi, Christopher. Who else? We got Jacqueline saying, you've got to face your fears every day, whether it's a fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear, whatever fear you have, don't let it define you, which we're going to talk about here. And so it's a great point, Jacqueline. She says, my tolerating days are over. I know we've had some great conversations, her and I. We got Nellie from Hooked on Humanity. Beautiful soul. She says, hello, I'm sorry I'm late. All right, Nellie, you got to give me 25 push-ups. No excuses. Everybody's saying good evening to each other. We got Nicole Young in the house. Good evening, fellas. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Nicole, thanks for
she didn't join us at the end of it like she usually does. What's up, Nicole? Thank you for being here. Let me scroll up here. Nicole says here, that's powerful. Face it. 100%. Robert says an ongoing work in progress. Absolutely. I think about the hero's journey. Are you familiar with the Joseph Campbell story?
Yep.
Of course you are. So for everybody who is watching and listening, if you're not familiar with it, you guys know I talk about it. If you're not familiar with it, here it comes. It's on YouTube. It's like an hour and 23 minutes. It's called the Joseph Campbell story, the hero's journey. And in there, guys, it talks about the whys of us going through our peaks and our valleys. And so oftentimes we want to enjoy the peaks of life and we don't want to go through the valleys. And what Brian and I are talking about tonight is the fact that both he and I have been through some shitty experiences. I mean, I can count on so many different hands. I don't have that many of all the different experiences I've gone through where it was why me or woe is me or why is this happening? But in retrospect, I can say this, and I have to say this to myself as I go through those hard times. Again, what part of this is happening for me and not to me? and looking back on being homeless and having a first marriage where my wife cheated on me and blah, 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 all the different woe is me things that have happened in my life. I am grateful for every one of those experiences because it has helped me become the man I am today. Do I want to relive them? No. I just got through writing. I've got through the 15th edit of my book. It's Just You and Me, Kid. It's my life story. I don't ever want to experience those things again. But I know in my heart of hearts that there are going to be tragedies. There are going to be challenges and difficulties in my life. And so I choose to have that perspective of like, come on, bring it. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm going to face it standing tall and face it with my friends and my brothers and my mentors and the people I choose to have in my life that help me become stronger, rather than sticking my head in the sand, hoping, wishing, and praying that it goes away, or playing the someday game. Someday then I'm going to choose to be happy. You said it earlier, Brian, and I want to go back and highlight this for a second before I ask you the next question. Is when we live in a state of gratitude. I was just helping a client with this today. When we sit there, we choose so often that, oh, if I just had this, then I'd be happy. And they were explaining to me, if I just had the money, or if I just had this, or if I just had that. And I'm like, I know people who are millionaires, billionaires. I know famous rock stars. I know famous actors and actresses. And most of them have said in one form or another, Chris, I wish everybody could find financial happiness and abundance, and have them realize that it's not what it appears to be. Correct. That these people are still lonely, they're still insecure, that they're still fighting for every role that they get to further validate themselves because they've not done the inner work. Like when you focus on, geez, I'm grateful for the situation that I have. I'm grateful for I have a mortgage that I'm worried about paying. I'm grateful for the electricity bill I have because I have lights. And I told this to somebody else that helped them the other day. And I said, there's so many people out there that would kill to have, I was just saying today, actually, there's so many people out there that would kill to have your problems. That would kill to have your problems in comparison to what it is that they have now. And it's, again, like we've been talking about, it's about perspective. So Brian, when you think about fear, why do you suppose people are afraid of success? Because I find that question so interesting, and the different dynamics that we can go down. But a lot of people don't realize that they're afraid of being successful. Maybe it's the deserving part of it. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'd love to help some people out with that.
Number one is that they haven't defined it for themselves. They look at the media, they look at however they're programmed based on how they were raised in terms of defining that. If somebody does not do the work for themselves individually, where you bring out the pad of paper, you focus on it as a project, it's going to be very easy to be willy-nilly about it. But then also, though, to attach it on somebody that's not you, right? Because a lot of people might base their success on money, right? For me, I base it on health. For me, I base it on having freedom and being creative, right? Now, obviously, we have bills to pay, but if people don't do the work for themselves on these big things, number one, you can't get upset when you don't achieve them. Number two, if it's not that serious for you to do, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get there. It's always going to be this moving target that you never define, and then it's always going to be, you're looking at the puppy through the window, right? It's like, if I wish I would have that. Well, you could, but you didn't do the work to get it.
Right.
But you have to define it, and then you have to live it. The work is not going to do itself. But we're not talking about a one-time thing. We're talking about something you do all the time. I remember Russell Crowe when he was in I think it was a 60 Minutes interview. He talked about when he was doing Gladiator, the movie, many years ago. He goes, if I knew I was any good, I wouldn't work so hard.
I remember that. Yes. That is such a beautiful quote.
If you're not willing, this is your life. We don't get repeats. Some of us might get another attempt at it, but it's not guaranteed, right? We could all pass away tomorrow.
Yep.
But if life matters so much to you, what are you doing about it? And it's like, I've probably referenced this whole thought process so many times, is that I've seen many family members that are terminally ill, right? Mm-hmm. People flock out of the woodwork when they're terminally ill, right? People that might not have even knew that they were a family member up until they're terminally ill, and then they flock to their side, right? Psychologically, if that person really mattered to you, there shouldn't be an agenda. Mm-hmm. Why are you doing it only that they're terminally ill? If they mattered to you that much, it would be a routine thing that you did. And so if it's not if it's not a priority, it's never going to, and there's no way for it to be a priority unless you examine it, unless you do the work to make it important, because it's not going to come to you. Life goes by way too fast for something to just pop into somebody's brain that I'm going to take that on for a couple of weeks. We all know where that's going to go.
A couple of years. Right.
But and I just love it. Like in the performing arts and various classes that I've been to, I've gotten a lot of flack where it's like, somehow people create this narrative that it's like I'm better than anybody else. No, I just chose to put my butt in that seat in that workshop.
Right. And I give you credit for that. You're constantly working on yourself and expanding your mindset. And
it's in action is not, and this is one thing that I've harnessed over the years is that I observe a lot of things, and plus having a psych background is one of my degrees. I learn all I need to know just by observing people, their character, what they say, what they do. And it's like, just when somebody doesn't think I'm watching them, oh, they said that they were going to do this 3 months ago. Let's look on social and see if they're still doing it.
Oh, shit.
Not doing it. Well, then those words that came out of your mouth were just to win everybody over, accolades and ego. But the truth of the matter is you were full of it. Mm-hmm. Or you thought nobody was watching. Mm-hmm. I learn more about what comes out of somebody's mouth, but they don't attach it to action, work, do it. Like I think it was Babe Ruth said, you can never beat somebody that never stops working or never stops winning or never stops getting up. Mm-hmm. I don't want to sound cliche with a lot of these quotes, but there's a reason why they exist. But the problem in our society is that everybody's looking at each other to be like, who's going to go do it first? Why? That you're going to be like everybody else because your motivation, your internal drive isn't there. The reasons why you do what you do should not matter. Nobody should. I don't care what other people are doing, nor should I have to get their validation of why. Mm-hmm. It's my life. As long as it makes sense to me, that's all that matters. But also, though, there's some very interesting. There's a lot of very interesting pioneers that we had in our world where they were misunderstood too. Edison, Tesla, Jobs. A lot of people that people didn't understand. At first glance, they thought that they were this or that, but now we look at them as like, wow, as icons. Just because you're misunderstood doesn't mean you're on the wrong path.
Right.
Your path is unique in your own. And then you need to find people along that path. But if you cannot honestly say to yourself that I'm unique, I'm different, I don't care what anybody thinks, because it's lonely. But you got to be willing to be up for that challenge.
So true.
So true. And I think that the older you get, the more you harden that. Because I'll take 2 or 3 great friends that I could go weeks or months without talking than to have hundreds of acquaintances that don't really know me at all. Mm-hmm. I would rather have that because my time is valuable. But I know that every time when we talk, it's going to be valuable. We're going to go deep. It's not going to be surface level garbage. Surface level is okay, but that you don't really learn about people that much.
No.
How's the weather? How's the baseball game? I don't care. That's just buying time because I don't know what else to ask. If I'm going to engage in a conversation, given the lens I look through life now after nearly dying, and just kind of and really honing in on my authenticity as a person,
right?
Then I'm going to show up who I am. If you don't like me, that's okay, but I'm still going to be me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
One of the biggest lessons I've had to learn in my life that I got the blessing to learn is no matter how much validation or success or egoic, whatever shit I got, at the end of the day, if I wasn't authentic or I used congruent, if I wasn't congruent with myself, then what am I really doing it for?
Yeah.
I mean, like, oh yeah, it's great to be liked and it's great to, Chris, this, that, and the other thing. But I found myself, people often ask, how I became the kick-ass thing or whatever. I said, I never became it. I just stopped being all the other different versions of myself that no longer resonated with myself. And I was backstage at a multi-speaker event and I looked around and I was like, I was very successful. I was getting lots of speaking engagements. I wasn't cussing. And I was like, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about motivation today. And I was backstage and I looked around and I said, damn it, we're all wearing the same suit, the same tie. We're all doing the triangular pose. Like, ladies and gentlemen, have you thought about this? And I'm like, I'm not being me. I'm a rocker. I'm a biker. I'm a smart ass. And much to the chagrin, this is before Gary Vaynerchuk. This is before anybody knew Tony Robbins swore. I went and joined a mastermind, and in a group of like 26 people, I sat there and said, I'm thinking about just being me. And the whole room, you could hear their butt clenching. Like, what do you mean just being you? I'm like, I swear, and I'm a smart ass. I said, I'm a rocker, I'm a biker. You know, I just want to be me. I don't want to sit there and think about who I need to be for that particular audience. I want to stop thinking about needing everybody's approval and their validation, the stuff that I was chasing for, trying to get from my mother. And all but a couple of people in the room said, like, almost like jealously said, yeah, Chris, you should do it. A couple of people said, no, you're successful and people don't want to hear that, and da-da-da-da. And ever since that moment, Brian, ever since I said, I'm just going to be me, and I lost business and I lost all these different things, I gained the self-love, you know, right? When we ask ourselves, do we love ourselves? Yes or no? I go to bed at night. I feel awesome about the fact that I'm just me being me. People say, oh, you're this and you're that. And I'm like, nah, I'm just me being me. That's all I'm doing. If you dig it, great. Come along for the ride. If you don't like swearing, that's okay. I get it. No problem. Go find somebody you do like. Don't spend half a day, you know, like, I shouldn't swear, whatever. Go find somebody you do. And you find that the people that you, like you were saying before, I found so many people that were just hanging around me on the coattails, you know, Chris is this, he's a leader, blah, blah, that I found. And then when I was just myself, like, oh, hey, you know, like CEOs and powerful people like, I dig you, dude. You're just being real. You're just being real. I'm like, that's all I ever want to be. I just want to spread love and joy and opportunity for everybody. I want us to all win. I'm crazy like that. I don't care if you're black, white, short, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, whatever. I want us all to win together so we can leave this generation that's following behind us a great place to live. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. But I think at the same time that there's so much fear. There's that fear of making mistakes. There's fear of failure. What do you think, Brian, we can say? I mean, obviously that's a whole conversation in itself. What do you think we can say to people who right now are struggling? They're like, but Chris, you know, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. I'm afraid I'm going to suck at it. I'm afraid my wife won't support me. Whatever it might be. What do you think are a couple of strategies that people can walk away and like start implementing tomorrow to like shift that perspective and be, I talk about fear or excitement. And I'll give you this example real quick. I was at Six Flags Magic Mountain here in Southern California. And I thought, holy shit, that's really tall. And it was like the biggest roller coaster at the time. And I'm like, am I scared or am I excited? And literally the people in front of me were like, oh my God, look how tall it is and how badass. And we're going to all raise our hands and da-da-da-da. The people behind me were like, oh my God, look how tall it is. That loop-de-loop, I wonder how long that lasts. And, you know, I wonder if they all this different stuff. And I thought, same experience, excitement, fear. It's just how we look at it. And ever since that, I sit there and instead of being afraid of the mistakes or afraid of whatever it might be, I'm excited. I'm excited to go on stage and potentially stick my foot in my mouth. And who knows, maybe people will resonate with it because they might be afraid of making mistakes too. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to give it my best shot. So what are your thoughts on that? I know that's a very open-ended situation. Yeah. Hello, Lynn. Thank you for joining us.
There's two thoughts that come to mind. Number one is, what am I making this mean? What am I making this fear mean?
Yep.
Because let's go with that analogy. Let's go with your situation. It's like, what am I making this mean about how tall that is? And then your brain is just going to be like vomiting all over you, right? Yep. For lack of a better term, it's just going to, what am I making it mean? You know, it's going to stop. It's going to fall. I'm going to die. Da, 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 da. And you get yourself so into that place of not even enjoying it. Number two, what are you comparing it to? What are you comparing it to? Are you comparing this roller coaster ride to another situation you've had, which are totally disconnected, by the way? You know, we're trying, the human brain does not like to have thoughts without attachment of things, you know, and I get it. You know, that the way that our brain is wired, we want to map things together for easy reference. Right. But the reptilian brain, the part of the brain, cannot decipher one thing from another, that it's like, oh, you know, maybe I was on a roller coaster before and it ended badly, or I felt ill. But then how many other times was I on roller coasters where it was the best thing I ever did? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The brain can't take both of those at the same time and deal with both of those. It's either going to be one or the other. Mm-hmm. And the more you're looking at it, you're probably going to be in the fear state. What could go wrong? What could go right? Why are you allowing yourself to hold back from this experience? And how much of that are you being vulnerable from other people that are trying to tell you how to feel? Why is somebody else's fear being involved in how you view this situation? Each person needs to determine that for themselves. But it's all internal here. We psych ourselves out of something. How many times do you do things where it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad? Well, then why did it take you 3 years to do that? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be a hypocrite. There's plenty of things in my life that I wish I would have done a lot sooner because I filled my head full of a bunch of junk about how long it was going to take, and it didn't along the way. But getting started. Those are just a couple things that come to mind, but we suck ourselves out. We listen to more people about how they feel when it comes to fear than what we should be feeling ourselves. We always want to take on somebody else's opinion and make it our own versus us finding our own stuff.
Right.
Why are we letting somebody else's fear come into us? You know, and obviously the brain is going to do what it's going to do, and we got to have completion. We can't have things open without completion. The problem is that are you really living a life on your own with your own thoughts, or is it at the mercy of other people that are just telling you what they're thinking, and you're like, oh, that sounds good, I'll use that. Fear is all made up. It's all made up. It's manifestations of our programming of a human being, to how we were raised, to life experiences. But the clarity comes by getting rid of the meaning of fear. You know, if somebody was an intruder in my house, I would know exactly what to do. The difference is, if I'm fearful, I'm frantic. Right. If I'm not fearful, I know exactly what to do, and I'm not going to allow myself to get ahead of what the situation actually entails. I faced a near-death experience before. I'm okay. I'm not saying it's going to get that way, but just as an example is that the wiring is different. The wiring is different about how you interpret those situations. One's uncomfortable, the other's not. If you've had previous experience with fear and you've really done fearful things, you know, it's like stepping up on stage and doing different things up on stage. First time you do improv, you're scared out of your mind.
Right.
All of a sudden you do a couple shows, you're, man, I like this. I'm meeting more people. I'm having fun. What's the difference? Repetition. Putting yourself in spaces that demand being fearful. Eventually that fear is going to go away.
Yep.
But if you only do it once in a while, good luck with that. You need to put yourself in, and I learned this from a therapist. She's, God bless her, Dr. Jennifer. She was my psychologist for quite some time, and then she went to private practice. And she told me, she goes, whenever you're having issues getting started, saying, I'm going to start that. I'm going to just start that. I'll write a couple lines if it's an article. You know, I'll spend 10 minutes on that. Because you're not putting so much pressure on yourself that you have to have it all figured out, that you need to know everything. You just get started on it. You stop being so harsh on yourself. You stop being the perfectionistic tendencies that you need to have to be like, it's got to be this length. It's got to be written this way. It's got to take this amount of time. All nonsense. When you lower the pressures onto yourself about how something looks or how it should be, and stop that critique, it's usually going to go a lot faster, and it's probably going to be better than you thought it was.
1,000%. I want to jump in here for a second. You know, it strikes me what you're talking about. And I always try to distill things down into the most simplest aspect of our thinking, because oftentimes we over-explain things or we overcomplicate things. But for me, it's like, am I living or am I existing? And I find that in that state of fear, I'm existing. Why am I living in that state of fear? Because it's certain. We want predictability. We would much rather have certainty and fear than unpredictability and excitement. And I think that's a beautiful thing, is when we ask ourselves, you know, what can I do by which doing so that I can push myself out of my comfort zone just one way tomorrow? Just one way tomorrow. How can I push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone? I'm uncomfortable talking to strangers. Can I walk up to somebody and just say, hey, I hope you have a blessed day? can I just do that? Can I ask the cash register lady, you know, like, what's the best part of your day? What do you love most about your job? Can I just spend 2 minutes while I'm having that transaction? Can I have her go home and think a little bit differently about herself because I took that chance to step out of my comfort zone, and I choose to live over exist? Because so oftentimes, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, you talked about terminally ill people. Why is it that when we know we're going to die, we're going to go jump out of the plane? I'm going to fucking go jump out of a plane. Yep. Like, why is it when we know of the cancer diagnosis that we're going to go do our bucket list? Why do we all of a sudden spend the money we don't have in order to have those experiences, when all it is just a shift in our perspective to say, you know what, I'm going to choose to live today. I'm not going to choose to exist any longer. I'm not going to choose to be around the people that keep me safe and predictable and comfortable. I'm going to hang around people who are jumping out of that plane to say, come on, Chris, let's go. You know, I had people like that had me go ziplining in Jamaica, and I was like, and all those motherfuckers said, we're going to go without you. And I'm like, huh? And so I got on that zip line. As fearful as I am of heights, which is another story, I went out and had an amazing time. I'm like, listen, I'm going to buckle up to this thing, whether I want to or not. I'm going to choose to do this because I know it's going to be uncomfortable. These guys seem to be having a great time. It wasn't until I heard my wife go through the bushes and go, holy shit, that I got really scared, because I'm like, if she said that, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And I found out it was like a 3-mile drop after those trees, but that's another story. But when I also think about it is, when I think about, like, I used to say, I'm afraid to fly, or I'm afraid of heights. And I'm like, so curious. I'm always curious. Like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this? I know it's safe. I know everything's fine. And I deduced it to this, Brian. It's the fear of not being in control. Like when I drive a car, which is predictably more dangerous than flying in an airplane, I feel like I have that split second control that if something goes wrong, I can control my outcome. If I'm in a plane at 36,000 feet, there is nothing I can do but kiss my ass goodbye and hope that I lived a great life. What are your thoughts on that? And living in certainty and predictability for people watching and listening, how can they start to break out of that rut and that sense of complacency?
You have to want more for your life.
How do they get that? I don't know what I want, Brian. I'm just trying to figure it out.
I think you get it. I think you have to, I think it starts with your self-love. It starts with your self-belief, but also though it's a lifetime project. You're going to, what you get out is eventually what you get out. It starts with what you put in, but you're also doing it from a standpoint of discovery, not necessarily because of there's going to be some kind of reward, right?
Right.
The lens you look through life is always going to continue to evolve, but only if you choose to see it that way, right? The view that we have when we're young is going to be a lot different as we learn, as we grow, but you have to be willing to move the needle. Now, the needle will move on its own, but you might not like the results. Well, that's you allowed it to happen even if you didn't choose it per se, right? You know, like they say that there's 3 answers to everything. You know, yes, no, or maybe, or, you know, if you choose not to answer, it's still an answer anyway.
Right.
You have to be at the source of your life if anything's ever going to change. You have to be willing to update that internal programming about how you look at life through your life experiences and how it all goes. But also, though, you got to be in action. None of this is going to happen by sitting on a couch and analysis paralysizing all of it. It's not going to happen. Yep. You got to be in motion every day. Now, none of this that I'm telling you comes from I have it all written out. It's coming from falling down many times, being a freaking mess up here every day, being a mess up here. But I'm like, I know that what I'm putting into the world is going to make a difference. Maybe not for everybody. To those that it does, great. To those that don't understand it, that's okay too. Move on and be surrounded by your own people. But how people use that, you got to get hard on yourself. If you do not get hard on yourself about what matters to you, what you want to do in life, and how good you want to be and what really matters, if you're not willing to get hard on yourself, and almost to like a military standard, in my opinion.
In what way? Can you give us an example? Maybe something in your life where you had to get hard on yourself?
Yeah, my health. And also though my mental well-being. Everything can be traced back to my mental health, can be traced back to how much sleep I get, my diet, and how much exercise I get. I was getting very bad headaches. I was, my depression was out of control. I always wanted to be alone. I really would just fester in my own thoughts without really any productive action. And then I could not focus for the life of me. You know, it could be as simple as like, I need to do these 3 things, which would be like 15 minutes worth of work, and I could not focus on any of them. Wow. And then I would sit there and I'd strategize, like doing a hierarchy. Well, I'm going to look at all 3 of these things and I'm going to be like, well, this one's easier, but it's more creative. That one's more fun, but it might take longer. I would do that. But everything can be traced back to those 3 things, which would be the sleep, the sleep, the exercise, and then the nutrition. That's how I derived at what worked for me. Everything can be traced back, no meds or anything like that. But I knew I needed to change because I could not focus. I got very down on myself, which isolated me from other people. And I'm an extrovert. I want to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
And so when those things are off, and then if your self-belief and if your self-concept is slipping, that's a reservoir for disaster. True. Because you're festering all alone. Nobody's able to teach you anything or tell you anything that could go up here and change everything. And so it's very easy for me to self-loathe. It's very easy for me to get down on myself. And when the blinders are on, no matter how much I've done in life, when the blinders go on, they go on tight. And so I need to do these things so when I look out every day is that I'm my normal self, but I'm also not festering in all of the stuff that gets me nowhere. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow, that's a waste of what I could do today. Mm-hmm. But you got to be, the other things would be, is you got to do this on your own. You can't have a friend. You might have a coach or whatever. I highly recommend a coach of some kind. Maybe it's a friend, but it's a certain type of friend that's not afraid of being honest with you and upfront.
Yes.
You got to have that coach, that person that's going to give you the business regardless. Because somebody that's just going to tell you what you want to hear, that's not a coach.
No.
Even whether or not you're paying for this person doesn't really matter. You got to be willing to hear what they have to say. You got to be willing to take it in, and you can't get mad at them. That's the true distinction of a coach. Mm-hmm. Somebody that's going to hold you accountable, because it's all about the integrity of what comes out of your mouth. If you declare you're going to do something and a coach does not hold you accountable, number one, they're not a coach. Number two, they're letting you off.
Yep.
Because you've been letting yourself off the whole time anyway. And so there's this mental toughness, this mental discipline, this physical discipline has to be there for yourself. Because if you put yourself through things that you might never witness in life, you're going to dominate life. But you have to do that yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you. Now, I study a lot of military people. Jocko, Jason Redmond. I learned so much from their books. I'm way past even considering going into the military, but it's something that pondered in my mind about 3 years ago. That I'm like, you know what? If I would have chose a different path, I probably would have went special forces. Yeah, that'd have been what I would have strived and lived my life to achieve. But I've learned so much from that, where it's just discipline, integrity, honor. But you have to embody that if it's ever going to apply. You have to immerse yourself in what it's like to feel like crap because you were 1 minute late at a meeting. You got to feel it in order for it to change, for it to get better. If you're not willing to feel it, there's no embarrassment is to me is one of the most powerful things, because what are you going to do to change it? What are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. I remember
responsibility.
I remember that there was 2 very important lessons I learned from a couple friends of mine. How can you afford not to? What are you going to do about it? Everything is within us about action. It's not about talking about it again. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do to disrupt your fear? You need to put yourself in more situations of fear, not less. Because eventually that lens you look through life about fear will go away. But then it'll either be one of 2 things. You become immune to it, and sometimes you might even seek out more fear. Like you watch scary movies or jump out of airplanes or whatever it might be. But sitting back and waiting for something to become less fearful, but you're not walking towards the fear, isn't going to help.
Mm-hmm.
And none of any of these things that to anybody that's watching is going to make any difference if you don't do the work. You got to do the work. I don't want to be a tired record here. And this is nothing new. Personal development books, Napoleon Hill, W. Clement Stone, you got to do the work.
Yep.
If you don't do the work, and if somebody says, well, where do I start? Start right now. You'll figure it out as you go. And then all of a sudden you'll get that flow state. And all of a sudden, wow, I'm moving. All of a sudden you start to see where you're like, man, it would have taken me forever to walk 1 mile. I did that just by walking around because I wasn't being so hard on myself.
Right.
But you gotta do those things, whatever it might look like. I didn't start walking miles every day at over 1,800 days in a row in Wisconsin when it might be cold outside or snowing. I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it because it was a commitment I made.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, between days 52 and 54, that's when it went off of my brain. That I'm like, oh, this is something known as a habit.
A lifestyle.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The time, the routine, the time I can just listen to something or watch what's outside.
Yep.
It made a huge difference to me. And it's how I live my life. But you have to walk towards those things that are fearful. If you don't do it, getting better at fear or having fear, being on top of fear isn't going to go away. And I mean, obviously, I look through life through a different lens after surviving a near-death car accident. But just because I went through that doesn't mean your path just to get there might take a little longer, might look a little different.
Right.
But anything that you want in your life, your family, yourself, education, fortune, whatever it might be, isn't going to happen by sitting on your couch.
Not hoping, wishing, and praying.
And it's like, it's amazing about how many books have been written about all of these different things, which is nothing new underneath the sun, right? But it's amazing how many times people say it in just a different way, and all of a sudden something triggers.
Clicks.
You've been hearing the same old story and the same old books the whole time, saying about the same thing, but you just heard it in a slightly different way, and all of a sudden, whoa,
mm-hmm.
It's such a fascinating thing, but all of this stuff, you have to run towards it.
Yes.
And if you don't run towards it, if you don't do things that will allow you to minimize it, it's only going to grow and manifest. And then you're going to live life through the lens of someday I'll do that.
Yeah.
Someday is not a day on the calendar out of 7 days.
Yep.
And
when anybody ever says that, I say, tell me where someday is on a calendar. And they can't. I'm like, very good. I said, now you're going to commit to it. So what day are you going to do it? When are you going to start?
One of the biggest things that I love to do is failing. Like whenever I'm writing a document or whatever, the first draft is garbage. I don't get mad at it. I'm just like, well, I wasn't ready or wasn't my best material, and I start again. Most people would just stop doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also a bonus to some people. To people that have a strong exterior, they're tough people. They know that they're going to beat out everybody else because they don't stop. Their motor never ends. And that's the kind of stuff that hopefully everybody gets from this, is that you can become unstoppable, but you got to choose it and you got to do everything that gets you there. And it's not going to be an overnight success. My accident was June 14th of 2009. That was 16 years ago, coming up here in June in a couple months. But it's what I've learned throughout that from the standpoint. And obviously not every day is you're going to be like, there's going to be balloons outside and you're like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
But I'll take every day as a neutral to be like, where am I moving that needle?
Right.
Am I moving up another rung of that ladder? But these are all choices we have to make. You cannot become tough, whether it's physically, mentally, without doing things that create that toughness. It's not going to happen.
Brian Kelm, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Kelm. Holy shit, dude. We've been going for an hour and 4 minutes. I always promise to try to keep them under an hour. Dude, this conversation has been phenomenal. Yeah, lots of comments here. I'm going to get to the comments in just a second.
Let's see them.
So Nelly says here, she says, you're right. I get more accomplished when I don't make heavy demands on myself, just go day by day. Yep. 100%. Robert says that zip line must have been a blast. Yes, once I decided and I put the helmet on, 100%. It was crazy. It was something I'm very proud of that I did for myself. Let's see. Lynn Serrano says here, thank you, sister, for being here. She goes, have faith, not fear. And I just want to say something before I ask people to for you to tell people where they can get a hold of you. Multiple times through the conversation, you have said about the lens, and I have a firm belief that you have the choice to look through the lens of love or the lens of fear. And so anytime in our moment when we're going through life, what lens am I looking through right now? Am I looking through the lens of love or the lens of fear? Am I looking through the lens of opportunity or am I looking through the lens of despair? Whatever it is, and what is it that I can do to switch that state so that I can see things through a lens of love? So, man, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I know that there are so many nuggets that people are going to get out of this. If you came into the conversation halfway through watching the live stream, go back and check out the very beginning of it, because we just jump right off the deep end and talking about what it is that we can do to overcome our fears. What we can do to live a bigger why in our life. So where can people get a hold of you, brother, and learn more about Brian Kelm?
Yeah, so on my Facebook page, that's my personal page right there up on the screen.
For people who are listening, say it out.
Yeah, reach out to me, facebook.com, fb.com, / Brian Kelm, BrianKelm 1. And then also, though, on my TikTok page, shooting videos seems to be more natural for me than writing stuff out. So that's my business page. Feel free to reach out, connect, whatever. I mean, I'm
say it for people who are listening, because most people are listening.
Yeah, so it'd be TikTok.com, at least in the United States here, at Brian Kelm, BrianKelm Productions. So TikTok.com at Brian Kelm Productions. Yeah.
Man, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I knew it would be. We can continue to have these. We should have them more frequently. But thank you so much, brother, for sharing your heart, sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience. I know without a shadow of a doubt that when people go back and listen to this and you take your 3 strategies from this conversation, or 6 strategies in this situation, there is no stopping what it is that you can do. So thank you, brother. I'm going to put you backstage here for a second. Don't go anywhere so I can still talk with you. But I'm just going to finish out the show.
We're good. Thanks, everyone. Pleasure being here.
You are awesome. So there you have it, beautiful people. Now the question is, what are you going to do? Jacqueline says, how do you get over your fear of dying? Make sure you're living every day. There. Because we're all dying. You're dying right now. We're all dying. So the fear of dying isn't the situation. The only reason why you'd be afraid of dying is because you haven't lived. So when you choose to live every single day, I'm going to give you the condensed version. When you choose to live every day, then you can't be afraid of dying. And for me, that has been something I completely understand and empathize with you. But now I have developed the perspective of every day that I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's on the other side. Yes, I have a long life to live, and I want to be here for my son to see him get married and have kids of his own. That's my goal. That's my long-term goal. And I choose to live every day as opposed to existing. And I choose not to have regrets. And I have very, very, very few regrets, because I say what I need to say. I do what I need to do. I bust my ass every single day. I go to bed feeling a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride. Those are 2 big words in my life. I wake up with gratitude. I go to bed with gratitude. So how do you get over your fear of dying? Make sure you're living every single day. And I know you are. Get out of your comfort zone. Go out there, take those risks, do those things. It is so true. Robert says here, truth, better late than never. And I want to say something, what Brian says. I so often get somebody telling me, I wish I would have done it sooner, Chris. Don't be in that situation. Don't be in that situation. I wish I would have taken care of my health sooner, Chris. I wish I would have ended that job sooner, Chris. I wish I had ended that relationship sooner, Chris. Whatever it might be for you, stop saying that and just decide. You make a decision. You make a commitment starting now. I'm no longer going to tolerate the negative self-talk. I'm going to put a rubber band on my wrist and I'm going to snap it every time I catch myself saying something negative. And instead, I'm going to say, you know what, perhaps if I paid for a coach, perhaps if I went to a therapy session, perhaps if I woke up every single day and I did a gratitude journal, perhaps. Because ladies and germs, I'm going to tell you this. You have a mobile computer. You have a fucking computer in your pocket at all times. You have Google, you have YouTube, you have ChatGPT. I had somebody, God bless them, and I hope they're not watching, but if they are, so what? I'm not going to say your name. I had somebody sit there and say, Chris, I want to get healthier. What do you recommend I do to eat healthier? And I said, I recommend you ask an expert. I recommend, like I did, I hired a health and diet coach for a year. That lady took me to Trader Joe's and she said, hey, guess what? Not everything in here is healthy. And by the way, I thought those veggie chip snacks were healthy and I'd eat a whole bag and thought I was eating my veggies, but no, there's a ton of oil and there's a ton of shit in there. So I've hired experts in my life. Or I go to Google and I go to YouTube or I go to ChatGPT. I do it nearly every single day except for the weekend. That is strictly my family time. But there are experts out there. So you ask the question and then you implement the answer. And progressively, day by day, inch by inch, moment by moment, you become a little bit more exposed and aware. And like Brian said, you get vulnerable with your answers. Am I happy in this relationship? Yes or no? Am I happy in this job? Yes or no? Am I happy with my health? If I can fast forward 10 years and I'm sitting in a doctor's office and they say, hey, guess what, Charles? You have pancreatic cancer. Guess what, Charles? You have stomach cancer. Guess what, Charles? You have bowel cancer because you didn't eat the right food. You didn't take a poop all the time. Whatever it might be for you. If you can look ahead and find those potential regrets, and then you look back on your situation from that moment and think, fuck, all I had to do was eat more vegetables and get my exercise in. And like Brian said, I commit to the 5: hydration, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and vitamin D. Right? I drink a ton of water. You see me do it throughout this broadcast. I drink a gallon of water at least every single day. Your body is like 80 to 90% water. I don't like water, Chris. Then fucking don't drink it and feel like shit and die early. I don't know what to tell you, but water is massively important. I look pretty fucking good for being 80 years old, don't I? See? Because I drink tons of water. Exercise, sleep. Brian talked about sleep. I wear an Oura ring. I track my sleep. But Chris, they're so expensive. Yeah, so is not tracking your sleep and fucking waking up and being dead one day or having heart disease or whatever it might be. You track your sleep and you realize and you start studying sleep. Well, Chris, I know nothing about sleep. You start realizing that there's REM cycles and there's sleep cycles and there's deep sleep and there's REM sleep and there's light sleep. And when you get deep sleep, you get restorative sleep. And guess what? You start tracking that shit and you start realizing, oh, when I eat before I go to bed, I don't get any deep sleep and I wake up exhausted. Well, how about if I start switching that shit? Nutrition, there is no excuse, right? Eat great 6 days a week and do whatever you want on the 7th day. Vitamin D. Most people are vitamin D deficient, even if you get sunshine. I take a vitamin D supplement every single week. It's once a week. What's the other? Exercise, right? I got my Apple Watch. I make sure every single day in some form, fashion, or another, I get exercise. I raise my heartbeat. So when you focus on 5 things every single day and you get a little bit more positive and you get the right people in your life and you start facing your fears and you start living instead of existing, guess what? You start feeling pretty fucking unstoppable. This is why I have these wristbands. You guys should wear them. One says no excuses and believe, because you got to believe. And the other one says no excuses and unstoppable. It is your choice. It is entirely your choice. I don't give a shit what happened in your life. I don't care whose fault it was, whatever happened. You are the person that are choosing to exist and to continue in that misery. You're the one that's continuing with that self-punishment. You got to stop doing that. When will you've had enough? Again, going back to Bob Donnell, when it becomes acceptable, it becomes inevitable, right? When are you going to truly start living your life? I want to make sure I got all your questions or comments here. Jacqueline Rose says, our overthinking screws us up royally. Yes. Stop overthinking. Just take action. Right? There's Nicole says here, a long post. I'll try to get through this. I'm part of this company. My upline today wanted to listen to another person. I won't lock arms with the team, not have someone to talk behind my back. What are your thoughts? I will answer that privately. But thank you for that question. And last thing I want to say is this: 75 hard. If you guys don't know what it is, Google it. 75 hard. When I first did 75 hard, it's 75 days, 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes each. One of them has to be outside. 10 pages in a personal development book, a gallon of water every day, healthy eating, no alcohol, and a daily progress picture. There's 5 things you do for 75 days. When I heard about this from Andy Frisella, which I know Brian knows Andy, when I first heard about it, I was like, that is ridiculous. I don't need to do that. I'm already committed. I already I gave myself every excuse that I didn't need to do it. And guess what? Because I was giving myself excuses, I did it the next day. The next day, motherfuckers. I didn't give myself a chance to think about it. I went downstairs and I told my wife, I'm doing this thing called 75 hard tomorrow. Do you want to do it with me? She said, what is it? And I told her and she says, fuck no. And I said, I'm going to do it. She goes, well, do you realize we have this coming up and then you're not going to be able to drink? And how are you going to do that? How are you going to do your outdoor workout when it's raining? I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll do outdoor yoga when it's raining outside, whatever it might be. I won't give myself any excuses. I've done 75 hard now 4 times. And every single time I've done it, I did not want to do it. Last time I did it was in summer. I didn't want to do it in the summer. I'm like, I like to party. I like to have drinks. I have a pool, And I was like, fuck it. Tomorrow you're starting it. And guess what? Like Brian was saying a little bit, that discipline, when you keep your word and you do 75 days of that, it is all fun and games at the very beginning because you're telling everybody like, oh my God, how great of that. And you get to day 27 and you're like, how many more days of this shit do I have? And you're tired and you're exhausted, but you get to that 75th day and you realize, wow, not only do you look better, you feel better. But the biggest thing is that you keep your promises to yourself. There was one time where I swear to God, I thought I did my second workout. I was doing these late shifts at work and I got confused. And I literally got into bed somewhere around 10:30, 10:45 at night. True story. I got into bed. I got the covers over me. I was going to sleep. I had to get up at 3:00 in the morning. And then I realized I was recapping my day. I just did my progress picture because I always did that at the end of the day. And I realized that I got confused that I did my second workout the previous night near midnight, but I got it done. And I realized I hadn't done my second workout that day. I was so tired. I was so exhausted. And I got up and I put my shoes on, I put my shorts on, and I went back downstairs. And my wife says, what are you doing? And I said, I didn't do my second workout today. God is my witness. She said, nobody will ever know. Babe, you have to get up at 3:00 in the morning. And I said, I will know. I will know. And I got my iPods and I went out and I walked in the dark of night for 45 minutes. I can't remember what I did. I did 27 minutes down and 27, but I can't remember what it was. But guess what? It was so beautiful and so still out that I didn't even listen to my headphones. I listened to the coyotes howling. I looked at the beautiful moon up in the clouds. And you know what I thought to myself? You kept your fucking promise, dude. There is nothing you can't do. I went to bed feeling all sorts of sense of accomplishment. People couldn't believe that I did that. And I've done 75 hard 4 times. It's amazing what happens in your life, ladies and gentlemen, when you keep your promises to yourself. That's how I started the show. I'm not going to try to get up at 5:00 in the morning. I'm going to get up at 5:00 in the morning. I'm not going to give myself any excuses. Mel Robbins talks about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just get the fuck up. I'm not going to try to eat healthier. I am going to eat healthier. Try is bullshit. It is bullshit. I'm going to try to eat healthier. I'm going to try to do better. No, you're just going to do it. Blood, sweat, and tears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I didn't want to do something tonight, and I went downstairs and I did it. I had to put an awning on a 20-foot carport canopy all by myself, and it was a pain in the ass, but I was like, I'm not going to let one more day go by. And I went downstairs and I committed to doing it and I got it done and I felt the sense of accomplishment. I've done 3 things today that I did not want to do and I did them. And guess what? Pride, accomplishment, and more than anything, I get to walk my talk with you guys. There is nothing I won't do and I won't share with you guys that I won't do myself. So because you got value out of this conversation, please share this. Share this. I'm growing my podcast more than ever, and I need your help. So please share this on social media. Sean Connery. If you don't know who Sean Connery is, you're young. Share this on social media and share what it is that you learned and you gained from this. And not only that, implement 3 strategies from this. Put it in the comments what it is that you're going to implement and come back here next week again for another episode of the Raw and Unscripted show. I think next week we have I've been doing a lot more solo shows, so I hope you've been enjoying that. We actually have a really cool dude, and I'm not saying this just because to say it. There's a dude that I just recently met not too long ago. His name's Eric Jackson. Cool dude from Tennessee, a fellow music dude. He shows up on the Zoom call and he's got guitars hanging up. I'm like, we're going to get along just fine. What he's been through in his life and his perspective is so similar to what Brian shared and what I share. So we're giving you the goods here. Please consider joining my group coaching program if you want to have that accountability in your life. If you want to have that no excuses aspect in your life, it's completely affordable. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it. People are getting massive results out of this. I do it out of the goodness of my heart. It's not very expensive. It's my way of giving back to you and having the community go out there and do other things for other people so that we can all make this world a better place. And we all need to do that. I'm counting on you. So with that, I know we've gone way overdue on our time, but it's from purely my heart. We're going to continue being here every single week. So I love and respect you guys. Go out there, be brilliant, and I'll make sure I comment on all the comments. Be sure to look out for the snippets on this particular episode Brian and I will be sharing. And I'm going to go enjoy my family now. So with love, stay raw and unscripted and unstoppable. No excuses. That was weird. I never had that. It said, do you want to leave the site? Like normally I just say end the stream.
Oops. We're still live.
We're still live. Let's try that again.
It's still live.